All right, YouTube's telling me I have an excellent connection. Very reassuring. Great, stream number 14. Here we are. Yeah, let's get straight into it. I guess first thing we need to do is see what the poll results are this week. Folks were voting between updating existing components with our fancy new focus state component that we built in the last stream, or cleaning up the Figma file because it's getting a bit unruly, and figured I could share my thoughts about what a clean Figma file looks like, and kind of how I define that for myself. I'm super interested, by the way, in what other folks think. So I'll just say it right now. If, as I'm going through this, yeah, and we're going to be cleaning up the file. If that's not clear, we got to vote here. As I'm going through this, if folks, have differing opinions or other strategies that I'm not thinking of, if you're on my newsletter list, you have access to the file. You're welcome to drop comments around here in Figma. But also, feel free to drop comments on the YouTube video itself. All right, so first thing I need to address is that I am on Figma's free plan. I do not pay for Figma. So you'll notice I've titled this file Component Library, but you can see up here, this little blue file icon tells us that this is just a regular file, something that you might do delivery work in or have connected to a library. So I'm kind of faking it a little bit here. So that's one thing to make note of, is we don't have like that publish capability, nor can we access these components in other files. But besides that, that's really our only restriction, I think. I can make as many pages as I want, as many components as I want. Yeah, no limitations. So what I want to do first is kind of look and just see like what are the contents of this file so far. I am going to treat this as I would a real component library that could publish, that could push components out to other files. And how I would organize a component library, I think, is different from how I would organize a working file, that I would be doing like work that product managers or engineers would be collaborating with me in, to, push a new feature to production. But yeah, let's start on this components page. This is where I've spent the most time. Decent name, but the way that things are laid out on the canvas is just, it's sprawling. I think a lot of folks do this where I think Figma kind of spits you out at maybe, this is my hunch actually, at like 0, 0 XY coordinates, and then you just sort of start building from there, kind of to the right and down, which is sort of what has been going on. You can see we've got sort of clumps of things, and I might have been dragging things around to relate things that are related to each other, sort of creating these little clusters. But this is not helpful. Unless you've been following along with every stream, if you were my colleague and I was asking you to come into this file and work with me, I would be very embarrassed by this. Typically, what our team does, and the teams that I've been on in the past have done, is have one component per page. If there are like components, though, things like you have multiple different types of buttons, all the buttons would live together on a page called button. So that's one way we could do this. And it's probably how I would, if I upgrade to a paid account and I turn this into an actual library that I could publish from, which I do want to do at some point. I think that'll be a good way to sort of test some other like workflow methods. This whole stream series has very much been about testing this theory I have about like different types of components. We've been building majority interface representatives, but there's some other things in here too, like placeholders. But eventually I want to get into some of the other types, like content carriers. Here's an example of one, which, now looking at it, I wonder if this is actually maybe an interface representative or a subcomponent for modal. Might need to revisit some of these. Anyway, yeah, talking about workflow stuff could be another cool way to make use of this stream. So yeah, my hunch is that splitting up components into individual pages will be good. Um, I've got some thoughts about that though, about the page panel specifically, and we can get into those, I think, in a bit when we actually start splitting these up. What I want to do next is look at some of these other pages to just see what's there because it's been a while, like inventory. I remember the very first few streams I did, it was all about collecting screenshots, and I was spending a lot of time in the inspect panel just trying to understand, uh, the visual design language and how many different, elements I would need to build and what those names should be. You can see here, I've got like a full screenshot. Here, let me get rid of the interface. Oh, and once again, I don't have Keystroke Pro open. That shortcut that I just used for getting rid of the interface and bringing it back, I believe, yeah, Command period shows and hides the left and right panels and the top UI. Anyway, I've got this whole screenshot here, and oh, you can see I was trying to create text styles, try and like overlap and get the font size right for some of these things. So yeah, it was a lot of like establishing the styles, getting like the colors sorted out. I probably don't need this too much anymore. Yeah, now that I'm remembering it, it was sort of like the primary way I was building the styles, but I think for building components now, I'm more comfortable in inspect, and I'd prefer to grab screenshots in the moment. Already, even just in the last stream, if you watched it, you might have seen that the focus state component that we built looked different from the focus states that I originally had using drop shadows. Right now, the focus looks like this teal ring with a smaller white ring just beyond it, but let's see if I have another focus state. Yes. In the past, when I was setting up other components, the focus ring was a different color. So, updates are happening at YNAB. And so these screenshots, they age, they get stale, and they're no longer accurate. So I think I'd be comfortable archiving this page. And this is a technique that I don't use it a lot at work because I'm not doing delivery work. I spend majority, if not all of my time in component library files. But if you're a product designer who is working in local files, is working with engineers and product folks, mocking up new features or just new stuff for the production version of your product, this is a great technique about archiving that I learned. I believe it's on Figma's YouTube channel as well. It's a tip that they've shared, and I think should share it more widely. But if I want to still have access to this stuff without like really, really deleting it, but kind of get it out of the way, I think what a lot of people do is they'll set up an archive page and then just dump everything in there. They might put it to the bottom of their layer list. They'll select all this stuff and they'll just dump it in here and maybe, kind of lasso the whole thing into a section with like the date, the name of like, or some sort of descriptive name of like, we collected these screenshots for X reason. And yeah, just some sort of note, right? And I'm going to do something similar, but a little bit different. So I am still going to use this archive page, but I'm going to name it Archive May 4th, 2023 with the date. Actually, no, I'm going to take that same page name, but I'm actually going to rename inventory. The reason I want to do that is because I don't want to lose these comments, and this is actually going to be a really good test. We'll see if archiving comments works the same way. I'm okay with losing all of these. I don't really know what's in there, but I haven't needed them, and I think I was just figuring out class names for things and pointing out some spacing quirks. But let's try this out. So archive May 4th, 2023. From here, what we do is we save a version. Now, Figma is always kind of saving in the background, of course, but we want to commit like a hard save here, and we're going to name it the same thing. We're going to say archive May 4th, 2023. Describe what changed. I am archiving the inventory page, which contained screenshots and comments from early streams that I used to establish the type and color styles. I think that's decent. Your notes, of course, if it was delivery work, might be different. Maybe it's something like I was exploring, this concept of X, or I was, this is all of the inspiration that I collected. I no longer need it, so I'm just tucking it away. But a really brief description. It's good to take the time to do this. So we save that. And now if I go to the version history, we'll see it in there just for safekeeping. So we'll go show version history. And here we are. This did not happen 27 minutes ago. Interesting. I think what's going on here is this was the last autosave. And because I haven't made any edits to the file, it's just sort of co-opting that one and committing this archive to it. That's okay with me. But it is a bit misleading and confusing because I did just make that save about a half hour later than what's recorded in the version history. And I've got other thoughts about that whole thing being named version history as well. So we're good. We're safe at this point. I've saved it to the version history, and now I can just delete this entire page. Here's what I'm interested in. And before I even get into that, that feels a little scary to do, right? We've just deleted a bunch of content, but we still have it. We can, again, go to our version history. So now we're on the current version, right? Because I did make an edit just now, and I can look back to May 4th, 2023, and I get that archive page. Okay, this is good to know. All of those comments are gone. So good to know. But all the screenshots are still here. And if I wanted to grab something, I guess, this becomes view only. So I can't select things on the canvas, which makes it a little difficult, but I could, what am I selecting right here? Is there even a way to know? You can see that I can select things in the layers panel. So if I did need to resurrect something like, oh, this screenshot, that's going to be really useful. I want to pull that back into the current live editable file. I'm going to copy that layer, and let's see if we can do that. We'll go back to the current version. We'll go, I've got a test page. That's handy. I'm pasting, nothing's happening. Okay, that's also good to know. So resurrecting stuff also appears to not be possible, but you have it here. You have a reference. So that's a good way to keep your file tidy and kind of get rid of stuff that's no longer serving you without really, really deleting it, right? You still kind of have a history of the file, a history of your work that you could reference. Great, so we're back in the current version, and this is good. We're on this test page. There is nothing here. I'm zooming way out. So I'm just gonna delete this guy. Don't need it. And then thumbnail admin. I would not expect to see this in a component library file. I mean, I would expect to see a sort of cover page, right? And a lot of people put these at the top from what I've seen in like screenshots or community files or even on my own teams at work. But I now thinking about that, I'm wondering if that is the most useful page. I think whatever is at the top of the page list is where you start when you enter a file from the file browser. And there's nothing of real utility on the cover page for people, unless there's other material that you're putting there besides the file thumbnail, in which case maybe consider renaming this to about, or I don't know, something else that's a little bit more of like some sort of introduction or summary, basically the file's landing page. Like this is what this body of work is. So I think having an about page could be good. The thumbnail admin stuff, I might as well move it. You can see these are just some assets I created for the Figma community file. thumbnail looks a little bit different than the thumbnails that I use for the live stream. I'm wondering, let's see, 13, we're on 14 at this point. I hope the thumbnail on this video isn't incorrect. I just made this one the other day. I'm trying to plan a little bit better for, or have assets ready for when I need to postpone a stream last minute, because life sometimes happens, right? But yeah, let's go ahead and move these. So this we can just paste here. It looks like I've lost this being the file thumbnail. So where is that option? Oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on where that is. It should be in that, yeah, set as thumbnail. I'm just noticing when I cut it from the other page, there's like a little glyph that they'll either prefix or append to the layer name, and I seem to have lost that when I pasted it onto this page. So I won't worry about it too much, but you know, having a file thumbnail here is good. You know, something else that's really great about Figma being a browser-based tool is hyperlinks. You know, you can kind of like create these jump links, anchor links to objects in your file. So besides, like I was saying, besides this being just a place for the file thumbnail to live, you could also kind of create, in the past, I've created like a mall map, especially when I have multiple component libraries that are kind of working together, right? You might have your styles in one library, your components in another, that are, you know, it's the component library consumes that styles library. There might be other libraries that are, you know, just a whole web, right? And it can get very tangled and confusing. And when you have new people join your team, or if you're restructuring things, or just trying to get non-designers to understand your system, it can be really helpful to visualize how all those files relate to one another. And in each of those files kind of have like a, you know, I'm just going to use some rectangles, like, and let's get a higher contrast going here. You know, this is a very crude setup here, but maybe you've got like these two different styles. My goodness. Ant size default here. Auto. So maybe you've got styles for product A, right? Styles for product B. And then you've got components for product A, and then components for product B. This is very simple, right? And maybe they're not even separate products. Maybe they're different experiences. Really good example would be like a education platform of some sort, where you've got the teacher or instructor experience, and then you've got the student experience, right? Or anything where you have like these two different audience types. Or maybe there's, you know, free versus paid. I don't know. However you want to split it. Figma has some really good, speaking of, these best practices articles. And I know that there's one that talks about that. It's part of the series that Louis wrote. Let's see. Oh, I'm lost in where the landing page for all of these best practice articles are, but they're always going to start with something like best practices. You know what? I'm even in that file right now, or not that file. I'm in the very post that I was mentioning. Right. How do you structure your teams? How do you structure your projects? Like, what do you name stuff? Louis's got some excellent tips here. I've been referencing this this work quite a bit to help my team get a little bit more organized. But anyway, having this mall map, you could then, especially when you're working with text, you could link this to, you know, your Figma Figma.com/your file, right? Like every file has a URL, and you could land people on specific pages. Like it depends on how detailed you want to get with your mall map, but yeah, make it easy for people to kind of like figure out where they are, right? And maybe if we're in components A, right? Like circle it. You know, you could get really wild with variants. You are here. Turn both of these red or something. Something like that. This is really a really ugly version, but you could kind of like show people very quickly, this is where you are in the larger ecosystem, right? We're just looking at a single file, but you know, context, right? It's helpful. So that's something you could do on your about page. I do not expect that I will have a very complicated structure for this YNAB project that I'm doing. If anything, I might eventually move the styles out into their own file. I might move the icons, but because of the nature of this, and I expect to be working on this solo, it is easier, you know, like workflow wise, for all of that stuff to be in the same space. And I know a lot of folks sweat a lot about like, should I break this up? Should I have this really complicated structure? But when you're like a team of one or two, you really gotta think hard before you do that, I think, because it might, you know, you might be making more problems for yourself than you are experiencing the benefits. But again, it's very, very personal. You know, maybe your team is about to grow, like maybe your company's hiring a bunch. So context is important. I think it's cool to go with your gut on a lot of this stuff. I'm going to leave the mall map here. It's a good idea that we could maybe come back to if people are interested in seeing a less crude version of this. Okay, components, thumbnail admin. This is what we were doing. We were grabbing some of this stuff. I don't think I need these assets anymore, and I don't believe I need the file description or the YouTube description. YouTube and the Figma community both save whatever previous version I had, so I'm good to just like edit those. This little multiplayer asset, I mean, you can see I'm using it here for streaming. I would like to hang on to that in case I want to make edits, and I'll hang on to this as well. I'll grab all these thumbnails and we'll just move them over to, oh. Is that where it was? I don't think that's where it was. I messed that up. Oh, there's a reason why I wasn't a part of, yeah, that was a separate asset. Okay, good. We will cut and paste these, move these to about. I'm gonna make a section for all of this. We'll call this streaming assets. Gosh, it would be great if I could see the edges of this section. Just something a little bit darker. Cool. I'm not going to worry too much about making this very cute, but sections are something that I think are great because you can zoom way out, similar to what the effect you get with frame titles. But you can tell like the font, there's a lot more contrast. It's easier to read these section titles. So when you're way zoomed out or zoomed in, you know, you've got that legibility, which is helpful. So yeah, other things that I would put on an about page. Let's see. In delivery files, for designers on my team, I've seen them, you know, kind of create like a link hub. So, you know, obviously the work doesn't begin and end in Figma. There are often, you know, if you're using some sort of project management tool, and there's like tasks or tickets or issues associated with this work, linking out to those could be handy. User research, like, you know, just kind of your list of links, your list of, you know, connected, related materials. And that can sometimes just be as simple as like an auto layout list, like related material. Gosh, what is up with these? Auto, gosh. Yeah, even just in a single text file. Oh my, or not text file, text layer. Sorry, I'm just like really caught off guard by some of these default text things here. I wonder if there's a way to reset that. But yeah, like Jira Epic, UX research findings, inspiration, and just having just pasting links over each of these. And that, this kind of stuff, this context setting, paired with the mall map, like I think this makes for a much stronger about page. And this can be a component, you could have something that you drag in from the assets panel, so folks have they don't even have to think about, oh, what is all related to this file. Now I have to go hunting for that instead of doing my design work. You can kind of give them that list, and okay, maybe for this project there isn't inspiration. Let them hide that section. But this gives them a list of things to think about, and then they just have to plug in the hyperlinks, right? So this can be componentized. Mall maps can be componentized as well. These are great. Where do those components live? Those would be great things for an annotations library. Annotations are things that do just this. They kind of give some color to the file in terms of like, what is this work? Who's doing it? Why are we doing it? Give you that context. But also you just help people navigate. Like you can, leave notes on the canvas. I often see like sticky note annotation components. And this is another type of component that I think it's like it has a very, very specific job. A sticky note component is great for explaining like, hey, this frame that the sticky note is sitting next to, like, it's not part of the interface, right? Maybe the designer, is leaving notes about like interaction behaviors or, something that they just really need to communicate and make sure that other stakeholders, developers, product folks understand about the design that they might not be able to, maybe it's something they can't do in the prototype, or they just really want to make sure that everybody's clear about the expected functionality. So annotation components are great. I highly recommend, even if you're a small team, starting a library of those things. It can be a really great help for file hygiene and just making sure that no matter who opens any of your files, they're not feeling totally lost, and that they're just seeing this like spread of random things, appearingly random things, right? Like because I built these, there's order, there's some controlled chaos going on, but anybody else who jumps in here, this is a mess, I think. I think it would be very overwhelming to come into a space and see just materials spread out like this. So on that note, oh shoot, been doing all this talking. I'm just looking at the time. I do want to honor my half-hour stream limit. Gosh, hardly got any work done, but I talked about a lot of stuff. This was good to think through some like ideas for blog posts and whatnot. Real quick, I think in 2 minutes here we can come up with at least the pages that we need. So what I'm looking for components is this sort of top level name. Like you can see there's two different types of buttons here. So I would have a page for my buttons. I would have a page for all of those icons. You might call this iconography, whatever you want. What else is going on in here? We've got rows. These are also kind of buttons in a way. Those account names show up in the side panel, right? And actually, let's go to YNAB. So this is an account row. I'm not sure where to put that yet, so I'll come back to it. There's these larger chunks, like the sidebar. Does that need its own? It might. Let's just see what this looks like. Sidebar. What did we have? Account rows. What were we working on? More recently, we were working on table rows, right? And there's multiple types of table rows. These guys. The cells would be a part of that, I think. Or, and this is where it gets tricky with this, cells could be their own thing, and then they roll up to table rows. Should they be separate? They're very, very related. That's a question that I have for my future self. What else is going on? Oh, let's see. We've got the header. All of this fun stuff over here. modals, and all of their contents. Month tiles, month picker. I would put those together on the same page. Budget header calendar. This is tricky. So I was naming these off of, like, I think I was trying to stick to class names for a lot of these, or like, and for like the bigger parent container. But yeah, YNAB is a very different product from what I'm used to building. I have mainly worked on, like in my day jobs, I've worked on a web app, but where I'm currently at, it's more just like a website, traditional website with a lot of good info on it. So yeah, this is a bit of a puzzle for me, figuring out where all this stuff goes. But I think that's for another stream, a future stream. Yeah, I know not a whole lot happened in Figma in this one. We talked about archiving and how you can archive material, and kind of, yeah, just took inventory of what's in the file and started to move some things around, but not to a great extent. Made some pages. Yeah, I'll think about some options for next stream. I think file cleanup is still on the table. There's still some, I want to organize those components into some more logical structure. And I'll think of a second option. If folks don't want to talk file cleanup, maybe we can go back to building. But yeah, newsletter subscribers get to decide. So there's a link in the description below to subscribe to my newsletter if you're interested in that. I mentioned, I'm on the free plan for Figma. If you have found value in these streams, if you find value in my blog posts that I write on my website, I've got a tip jar. If you want to drop something in there, I would be very appreciative. That'll go straight to my tool stack. So things like Figma, some other tools that I use to kind of, run this whole thing, like my blog, and some other like operational things in the background. So yeah, hope this was enjoyable, and I will see you in 2 weeks for the next one. Thank you.